And so, like, that made me pause, but then after Chris called me, like, it just made me think about, like, it made me worry even more when he called and said that, because of the fact that my dad hadn't, like, I had realized that morning that he hadn't responded to my text message, and that really made me worry.
Who was the next person you heard from?
I did talk to Chris, like, a few times. Like, he would kind of keep me up to date. The other person I spoke to was my mom. She called me.
Around what time was this? Do you remember?
It was before lunchtime. Tennessee's Central, so we're an hour behind. It was maybe like 10 or 11-ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 11, 12 here, our time.
Yes.
And what did your mom say to you when she called?
She said, well, your daddy's missing. And I said, what do you mean he's missing? And she said, well, we're out here looking for him and we can't find him anywhere. And I said, well, go look. Are his clothes still there? Is his CPAP machine still there? Like, did he leave? And like, did he just leave? Like, you know, and I said, go look for that stuff. Look for his keys, look for his phone, look for his wallet. Like, go look for that stuff. And she just kind of was like, okay, and got off the phone with me.
Okay.
She did call me back, however, and she asked me if I was on any of his bank accounts. And I said, no, why would I be on any of his bank accounts? She's like, well, I just thought that maybe you could log into the accounts and see if there's been any activity. I said, no, I don't have access to that. And we hung up the phone.
Okay. Was that shortly after the first phone call that you had with her?
Yeah, I mean, she called me, like literally called me right back and asked me that question.
And then who did you hear from next?
I think it was Chris. I mean, he would keep calling just to like let me know. And I think I even said to him, like, call local hospitals, call, maybe like he went to the ER or something. But I know that when I like first got word that he was missing, I called my dad and it went to voicemail. And I don't know if I texted him, but I did send him an email to his personal email and his work email saying, like, we're trying to find you. Where are you? Please call me back. Like, just, it was very brief, something to just be like, hey, if you get this, call me. Mm-hmm. And then the next call I got was from Chris. And he said he's gone. I said, what do you mean he's gone? What are you talking about? And he said, Emily, he's gone. I was like, where did he go? He said, no, he's gone. He is gone. He's like, we think he's in the burn pile. And that's just kind of when it went, I just lost it. You know, I just said, I'm coming. I'm on my way. And then I think I talked to my sister Amanda, and she was very upset. And I just said, I'm on my way. I'll be there as soon as I can. And so I left the office. I called my boss immediately, and I packed up. I left. I went and got Olivia, and I called my husband, and he met me at home, and we packed up as quickly as we could, and we drove to Atlanta.
I want to talk about those phone calls briefly. How did Chris sound on the phone with you?
Frantic. Like, it first started like what is going on? Like, you know, when he said, I'm going to go up here and see what's going on. Like, it was almost like, I need to figure out what's going on. But like, when he got there and started looking around and like, they couldn't find him, like, he was frantic. And when he called me about them after they had found him, essentially, it was just devastation in his voice.
What about your sister Amanda? How did she sound?
She was crying. I mean, we were all extremely devastated. My mom called me when we were driving to Atlanta, and we just cried. We cried. I think the only words that I got out was, I'm on my way. And she just said, okay.
And so when you arrived to the house, do you remember what time it was? To the farm, I should say?
Yeah, it was early evening. The sun was setting, but it was early evening when we finally got there.
When you arrived, what was the feeling, the vibe of the scene when you got there?
It was very quiet. It was very, eerily quiet. Everyone was just standing around. No one was talking. And I was, when I got out of the car, I got Olivia out, and I just immediately handed her, I think it was to Amanda or my mom, and we were all crying. Just tears.
Was law enforcement on scene at that point?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you remember speaking with any law enforcement on scene?
I did eventually speak with Detective Hayes, yes.
How long was that conversation?
It was a pretty good amount of time, maybe 30 minutes or so. I can't really remember exactly how long it was. It was a good length.
And while you were on scene, did you hear Scott mention anything about a gun?
No, he was just he's like, there's something going on here. He was like his senses were up. He's like, there's something going on. This isn't normal. I definitely, driving down, in my mind, was thinking that some terrible accident had happened. He had caught on fire, doing something with the burn pile, and he had caught himself. I thought he had, had a terrible accident. And then by the time I got there, it just quickly started to sink in the seriousness of what happened, and, just reading the room, essentially. I think a lot of people, their suspicion of what actually happened was starting to grow.
Did Scott mention anything about blood to you?
No.
When did you find out that your father had been shot?
Well, it wasn't confirmation, but the first time I ever heard of him possibly being shot was Friday, so I guess that was the 6th. My brother Chris called me very, very early in the morning and said Detective Hayes called him and said that they had found a bullet in my dad's rib. And I said, what? What? It was surprising to hear that. And they were like, yeah. And, he's asking, me about it. He's asking where I was. And that's also the time he filled me in. I didn't know that my mom and Scott were being questioned at the precinct. I had no idea that was happening. And Chris told me, yeah, they're apparently still there. And honestly, my first reaction when I found out that my mom was still being questioned, I said, do we need to get her a lawyer? That was my first reaction. I said, I don't know what's going on and I don't know what happened to him, but I don't want her to get in trouble for something she didn't do, so maybe we should get her an attorney. Okay. That's kind of what we discussed at that point.
Okay. So did that happen? What did you guys do next?
We did. I think Amanda called maybe somebody at my dad's law firm with recommendations on what to do, and she got a name and she called, and we did later that day end up going to an attorney's office. Yes.
On the 6th.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Did the whole family meet with the attorneys?
Yes, it was me and my husband and Olivia were the first to get to the office, and then Chris and Scott followed, and then Amanda, we were able to get her out of the room with questioning, and Amanda brought her down to the office.
Brought who?
My mom. down to the office.
Were your brothers there as well?
They were, yes. And Chad Bruce was there too.
Chad Bruce.
Chad Bruce.
And who's Chad Bruce?
Amanda's now husband, then boyfriend.
After meeting with the attorneys, did things change among the 5 of you, your siblings and your mom?
I mean, yeah, I guess so. I think something was brewing, I should say. That experience over that weekend, I know for me personally, definitely had me starting to lean towards somebody did this to him. And it was not, I mean, I think we all had our own perceptions of what happened, and we were taking it all in differently. But I know for me, I was kind of naive in the moment. But just the interactions over the weekend, how people were talking to each other. Like by the end of the weekend on my way home, I mean, I told my husband what I thought actually had happened. So,
you mentioned that you started realizing that someone did this to your father, but you had heard about a bullet.
Mm-hmm.
So were people not sure that
yeah,
had happened?
We basically had the attorney saying they could just be lying to you. It's not like they're not.
It's not the truth of the matter asserted, Judge. It just goes to the feelings of the parties.
Repeat the question.
My question?
Yeah.
What made her essentially say, we thought this could possibly somebody did this to him? Why was there hesitation when there was a bullet found in his body? It's to explain why they thought the way they did. Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Repeat your question.
Sure. When law enforcement informed Chris that there was a bullet in his body, and you had mentioned that you were coming to the realization that someone may have done this to your dad, but knowing that there was a bullet in him, why did people still think that? Why did you think that maybe it was not a bullet?
Well, the attorney, I heard the attorney say, like, they could just, I mean.
Don't go into what the attorney told you, just what your response was.
Well, Judge, it's not for the truth of the matter asserted. It's to explain why she thought that maybe he wasn't shot.
I don't know that she needs to explain why she thought maybe he wasn't shot. She can just say that she wasn't sure because she didn't know.
But I'm trying to get out why she didn't know. Not the truth of the matter asserted,
She
Judge.
didn't know because she hadn't looked in the.
It just goes to the feelings of all the parties afterwards.
She can talk about that. So you can go into all that without going to what the lawyer specifically said to her.
Okay. So, at any point, did you actually realize, and was it confirmed, that your father had been shot?
Yes,
Okay.
I did receive confirmation later that my dad had been shot, and that was pretty much the sticking point for me.
Okay, so prior to that, it was still essentially up in the air with the family that
Right.
that was confirmed.
Like this possibly could have happened.
Okay. You mentioned that was a sticking point for you. What does that mean?
I guess I just needed to hear that that's actually what happened. Like I just needed to hear that from like a professional, so a trusting source, that's what had happened. And when I heard that, I thought, I mean, it just confirmed my beliefs.
What was the relationship like between you and your mom after this? Before you found out about the confirmation of the bullet?
I mean, it was normal. I mean, I was still talking to her. I mean, it kind of blurs together, but I mean, I know that there was a lot of her. I mean, we were all like just trying, like all hands on deck, just to help with getting information. Like, we had no idea if my dad had a will. We didn't know really anything. We were completely hit. We were hit by this out of the blue. So we were really just trying to figure out what to do, just to kind of take care of things and get access to things. And I mean, I was talking to her during that time. I mean, she's still my mom, so like I didn't like act any differently with her.
Okay. And at some point, did that change?
Yeah, I mean, she became more hostile. She was more aggressive with us. She was demanding money. Like, she would like bring up instances where my dad had lent us money or something, and she would be like, "It's time to pay me back. Like, I need you to pay me back now." And I'm just like, well, you know, I had a payment plan with him. Like, I wasn't just going to give him like a lump sum. And, you know, she was getting pretty aggressive with that. Yeah, I guess that's kind of the best way to describe her behavior.
At any point, did she show up in Tennessee to your house?
She did.
What was that about?
Well, she did, I guess you can call it showed up. She did it twice. There was once where she kind of did a drive-by at my house. She circled my house a couple times with Martha Jane. There was another time where she showed up at like 9 o'clock at night out of the blue. I had no idea she was coming, and she showed up at my front door, and she came in. At the time, I had received a letter from Sally Sims. She's the coroner, I think. She had, you know, we were again trying to get access to money so, you know, we could take care of things. We were talking about, you know, getting a funeral together. What we learned from the funeral home is if there is a life insurance policy and someone's the beneficiary, like, you could basically use that to help pay for the services. So we were trying to kind of get things together. And so because we didn't have the death certificate, that made it really difficult to do anything. So Sally was so graciously, or Miss Sims was so graciously offered me a letter basically saying, like, you know, my dad's birth date and, you know, expected death date, but it was not a death certificate. It was just like on a letterhead.
Okay. And what was the purpose of that? To see if you could start paying down bills and stuff?
Yeah,
okay.
Yes, it was simply business related, just trying to like take care of things, yeah.
And so your mom showed up at your house?
She did. She showed up demanding that letter, and I didn't want to give it to her. I didn't want to give it to her at that time. Again, I had suspicions, and I just didn't want to give it to her.
Did you ask her questions during that confrontation?
Yes.
And what did you ask her?
I can remember, you know, she was getting angry that I wasn't giving her the letter, and I was saying, like, it's not a death certificate. You can't do anything with the letter. But I don't want you to have it. If you want it, you can call up to the coroner's office and you can get your own copy. But we did go into, I was like, you know, Mama, like, things aren't lining up. Your story, because like she would start going into like, well, when Scott reached down and picked up your daddy's skull, and I was just like that's the thing, is like, things aren't lining up. Like, your story's different than their story. And I was like, it just doesn't make sense to me. And the conversation did not end well. She ended up storming out.
What was her response to you confronting her?
She was calm. She didn't.
Did she answer your questions?
I mean, not really. I think I was a little erratic at the time. But I don't really remember her saying anything like there was nothing that would like stood out to me that she said in the moment. You know, ultimately she turned around and walked out. so my husband and I decided that with everything that was going on, it was best to try to do something with the house, because one, we were worried of the result of all this investigation was going to be, and also like we knew that we were going to want to move into a bigger home for our family's future. So we said, let's just kind of kill two birds with one stone. Let's get this out from under your dad's name or your parents' name, and let's find a bigger house. So I did reach out to my mom just to see if we could have like a cordial interaction to get the house sold. I told her, I said, my intention is to do what I said I would always do and get this house out from under Daddy's name. That's what I would like to do, and we're going to start that process. And she was not easy to work with. It was really bad. She just, I don't know if she wasn't understanding me. I was basically trying to get power of attorney for her in the matter of selling the house, so she didn't have to like come up to Nashville to like sign stuff. Like I could basically sign for her, but she did not have trust in me to do that, and so she asked me, like she would ask me to send her all the paperwork, and I would, and then she just would ghost me. Like she would just go quiet, and she wouldn't. I even offered to give her money. I was like, hey, I'll give you $3,000 if you'll just do this for me. Like I'll give you some money, and even then she said no. And so ultimately, we talked to our close friends there in Franklin, and they